Tuesday, March 16th, 2021. Regular Board of County Commissioners meeting will now be called to order. We'll begin with a moment of silent reflection for our first responders and members of the armed forces, followed by an invocation by Chaplain Chad Elverson from the Indian River Estates West. And then Commissioner Susan Adams will be leading us in the pledge. Please rise.
Almighty and everlasting God, we thank you for the gift of this new day. Lord, for the privilege we have to live in the United States of America, and within the beautiful United States, we have the privilege to live in Indian River County, and we thank you. Father, we do thank you for our first responders and those servicemen and women who are out there protecting the freedom we so enjoy. And we thank you for the previous generations who have served and honored and protected our wonderful freedom. So Lord, as we continue through this day, we ask your blessing upon the meeting today. We thank you for the privilege to have it. We thank you for our county commissioners. And God, we ask that you bless them with wisdom and discernment as they lead us. And as they carry the burden of leadership, Lord, we ask that you be with them and watch over them. So Lord, as we continue through this new day, we are so grateful to you for your presence, for your peace, for your strength. You rejoice with us in the good times, and you carry us through the difficult times. And for that, Lord, we are so grateful. And may your word be a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path as we praise you for all that you do. For in you we live and move and have our being. It is in your holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Join me in the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. First item on the agenda, is there any additions, deletions to the agenda, emergency items? I understand that item 5A will be removed and rescheduled at a later time when the recipient can be scheduled. Is there anything else?
Staff has a request for an emergency addition, 12E1 under Departmental Matters, Tiger Acquisitions LLC letter of intent for possible purchase of the 810 Bailey Road Tower.
That'll be 12B1.
E1.
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
Upon motion by Vice Chairman O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. First item on the agenda, we have a presentation and proclamation honoring James Hyde on his retirement from Indian River County Sheriff's Office. Well, when this all began, I knew that this was going to be difficult for many reasons. First of all, one never thinks that somebody of the grit of Jim Hyde will ever retire. It's one of those days that you just think is never going to happen. Then there was Jim Hyde's experience and career. Wow. It took so many turns, and it was a surreptitious, confidential, reassigned type of career. He was all over the charts. So I knew it was going to be difficult to get that all together. And I want to thank Under Sheriff Rowland for getting that together. Then there was the fact that we were going to have you all attend, but this league of individuals out here, from the High Sheriff, Captain, Chief, Lieutenant, Sergeant, most of these individuals former colleagues, trainers, highly respected individuals, and they're watching Jim leaving. It was going to be a tough one. Then it was what I thought of Jim, my first impression, as I stood roll call my very first day. I started thinking, this is an exciting change. I'm standing roll call in the Indian River County Sheriff's Office. Everybody's got shiny brass on, nice, sharp, crisp uniforms. And we're going to have roll call. And in walks this larger-than-life individual in street clothes with a 2-foot ponytail, with some scrunchies and rubber bands and ropes wrapped around his hair. Had something dangling out of his ear. And I just turned to the sergeant and said, "What's that?" His response was, "He's on special assignment." Okay. We'll figure that one out later. I thought we were in Police Academy 3. So it was going to be a little challenge. And so we got it all together. And, well, here we are. But how do you explain such a career well served? You're doing a proclamation. One other thing. Jim had a terrible habit of using a 4-letter word. Constantly. Constantly. Every step of the way. In front of the rookies, peers, sergeants, lieutenants, captains. He didn't care where he used it. He just used it in the public. Threw that 4-letter word out all the time. One day I was right next to the sheriff, Sheriff Roy Raymond. Jim comes storming in the office, and he throws out that 4-letter word like it was nothing, like a sober sailor should. He just yelled it out. I said, "What is it with this guy?" That 4-letter word was done. D-O-N-E. Everything that Jim Hyde was confronted with, every challenge, every task, he had a 1-word answer for, done. And nobody asked anything else after that. They knew that he'd have an ops plan, he'd have a mission, and he'd get it accomplished. So I could have made this proclamation real simple. It would have been the first time we had a 1-word proclamation, done. So I just want to sincerely thank Jim for, we may not even have to go this. You see, there's a residency rule and there's a lawful eviction that we could initiate. He's already getting mail here. Could you read that,
Sure, I'd be happy.
Commissioner Adams?
This is from the Clean Water Coalition of Indian River County, dated March 15th, 2021. The Clean Water Coalition of Indian River County would like to congratulate Lieutenant Jim Hyde on his retirement. As leader of the Indian River County Sheriff's Office Marine Unit, Jim, in coordination with other law enforcement agencies, has been extremely helpful in increasing the enforcement of maritime regulations. As a result, a number of derelict vessels have been removed from Indian River County and city waters, and citations have been issued for overboard, discharge violations, and other infractions. Thanks, Jim, and enjoy your retirement. From the Clean Water Coalition.
Better bring something to mind. Jim, you know the civil process on lawful evictions. You may not be able to retire. We may have to go through the whole procedure in order to have you removed from the building. So you may be here a little longer, so you may not be able to enjoy Lisa, the family, the future family, and your motorcycle as, look at this. Got everybody here. Thank you. Anyway, I wanted to present this proclamation, and, well, one more delay. You see, the proclamation says so much. I just wanted to read off to the public a little bit about Jim's career. 1984, a 19-year-old James Hyde, United States Navy. He came home and started at the IRCSO in 1987 at 23 years of age. Let's say he took a leave of absence during a time period between 87 and 88. Back to IRCSO patrol in 1988. 1991 to 2005, he was a detective, SIU, Mace, DEA, Task Force for 6 years, and CID. In 2009, Jim was promoted to Sergeant, Patrol. 2015, Jim was promoted to Lieutenant, Judicial Services Section. 2017, transferred to Special Operations Section. 2018, transferred to Uniform Patrol Day Shift Watch Commander. 2019, transferred back to Special Operations Section up until the present time. We'll allow Jim to talk about his time in Special Operations and his accomplishments. I'm sure he has a few words, and others. Now I'll just proceed with the proclamation honoring James Hyde on his retirement from the Indian River County Sheriff's Office. Whereas James Hyde is retiring from the Indian River County Sheriff's Office effective March 31st, 2021. Whereas James began his journey in law enforcement in 1988 and has served with distinction for 32 and a half years. And whereas James was employed in many capacities over the lengthy career, including deputy detective, undercover detective, task force officer with the Drug Enforcement Administration, but spent the majority of his calling in the roles of criminal investigator and supervisor. Whereas James' many years of experience demonstrated the ability of her leadership and strong public relations skills duly resulted in his promotion to the rank of lieutenant. And whereas James worked diligently under 5 sheriffs to protect and serve the citizens of Indian River County and the state of Florida. And whereas James' remarkable dedication to the profession has earned him the appreciation of Sheriff Flowers and all who have had the honor of working with him. He makes that distinction known. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the Board lauds the contributions that James Hyde has made to the citizens of Indian River County during his highly successful law enforcement career and wishes him a happy and prosperous retirement. Duly adopted the 16th day of March, 2021, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Lieutenant.
Yes, sir.
It's yours.
May I do math?
You're with your family.
That's true.
But then again, everybody in the room is family to you.
Come over to the podium, Jim.
Thank you. They're good
Yeah.
to me.
Get,
First and foremost, I'd like to thank the commission. This is a phenomenal honor for having this proclamation. Obviously, after 8 elections and 5 sheriffs, I don't believe a participation trophy would be in order. So, none of my children playing Little League, never. We just put those to the side. No, it's been a very interesting career. Working narcotics for the 12 years I did. I figured it out the other night. I worked with and undercover capacity with 21 different counties out of the 67 here in the state of Florida. And I can tell you that out of working with those 21 counties, there's no other county I would rather work in. There's no other county I'd rather live in. There's no other county I'd rather my kids to grow up in. The school board for my kids to be in. And Indian River Courts Act. We have the best equipment. I want to say we have unlimited budget, but that's up to you all.
working on it.
We get everything top notch. We get everything top notch in this county. And, back in judicial services, I was giving my marching orders, what I needed to take care of over there. It happens, but our courthouse is secure. But first off, I mean, I have to thank my wife of 32 years. Now, she doesn't get a participation trophy. She should have a trophy about this big. Because for putting up with me for 32 years, working narcotics, going out of town, Orange County, Osceola County, Palm Beach, being on loan for 2 to 3 weeks at a time, staying in really, really bad hotels where they gotta hose me down in the front yard before I come back in the house. So I've got to thank my wife for sticking with me for this long. Hopefully many more to come. Proud of my daughter. She is, we're expecting my second granddaughter, May 23rd, and she's on her third full year as a school teacher here in Indian River County. And I've got my son, who over there is my first granddaughter, Lila. She's 3 months old, and he is an Indian River County firefighter paramedic, who's also on the dive team. He's working on his third year there. And so we're keeping the Hydes on the county payroll. And obviously, my brother Mike, the bagpiper for over 25 years. And then, Mom, I'll have a confession. When I got out of the service, and I told her, I had 3 weeks before I started the academy, and she said, "You're gonna be a cop." And I go, "Yes." She goes, "You're gonna wear a vest every time you put the uniform on." I went, "Yes." So, Mom, for the first time in 34 years, I'm not wearing a vest. Oh my. I know. So I think we're good. I got plenty of firearms back there, so we're good. So, yeah, so for the first time in my career, I'm not wearing a vest. So I'm bad at it. But it happens. But it's been a phenomenal career. I can't thank Sheriff Flowers for taking the reins. And I think we counted them up the other day. I think there's 9 Dobeckers left. We call ourselves Dobeckers. So yeah, so I think there's 9 of us left. So the old guard is slowly and surely leaving the building. But it's been a phenomenal journey, and I thank every one of you for this. And it's going to be an interesting adventure after retirement. So thank you very much. I appreciate everybody.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
please.
I had the pleasure, being a career firefighter here, I had the pleasure of serving with Jimmy in many scenes and many different times, and I remember the four-letter words a little differently.
Well, that was on the scene of an incident.
Right, but
Helping adjective.
so, I do remember them a little
This is a
differently.
family-rated presentation.
Joe was starting to scare me.
But what I can tell you was always a pleasure and enjoyment working with him. He was always still the consummate professional. He got things done, and we appreciated that. And I do remember the undercover, seeing him sometimes undercover or at scenes and stuff like that. And we'd walk up and go, "Who is that guy?" "Oh, I knew who that guy is as soon as he said something." But it was always, Jimmy, it was always a pleasure working with you. It was always a pleasure, having fun with you and doing stuff like playing in the golf tournament and all that sort of stuff, and just kind of, hanging out when we had a chance to. And the county owes you a great deal of gratitude, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate being your friend. And I'm glad your son took the other path.
Wow.
Considering my son took your path, so yeah. That's right.
Well, I just want to say we're still in good shape. Because if that eviction process doesn't work there, we still have another Lieutenant Hyde. Lieutenant Michael Hyde.
One funny story before I wrap it up, because I know these guys are up there going, "Here comes Hyde, he's going to talk again."
A lot of people say that.
Jake, obviously, born in 1994, back about 98. He was getting ready for a raid early morning. Usually we get dressed in our raid gear at the office. But I was running a little late, so I get dressed and I come out, and he's already up watching cartoons. And he looked at me and goes, I had the nasty beard, the long hair, and, yeah, so it took us like 6 years to realize I was actually a cop.
Mr. Chairman, I want to congratulate Jim Hyde as well. We've had a run of good, I shouldn't say good, I should say great lieutenants over at the courthouse. And we appreciate everything that Jim did for the security and for us over there. Depending on whether Lisa wants it or not, I can waive the fees on the eviction process. So I just want to congratulate Jim. When my son and Jake went through the fire academy at the same time and they graduated together, I forgot my camera and he took all the pictures and sent them to me, so I do appreciate the relationship and thanks for everything.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whenever we have a law enforcement personnel retire, I always consider myself a little bit fortunate that I can say, well, I really didn't know them that closely, particularly from the back of their patrol car. So I always look forward to that part of it. But I know Jim has come out in my district a couple of times where we've had a subdivision that had maybe a drug problem or something. And Chairman, you're absolutely correct. Jim comes in with a can-do attitude, and it's, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to kick their rear end, another four-letter word, we're going to kick their rear ends and get it done. And Jim, it was so, as an elected official, you know, getting the heat from the residents to be able to have you come in and say, okay, I'm taking charge, and this is what we're going to do. So I want to thank you for that. I mean, that allowing me to tell those residents, hey, Jim's on the job, don't worry, it'll get done, goes a long, long way. So I just want to thank you for all that. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Sheriff?
On behalf of the men and women of the Indian River County Sheriff's Office and on behalf of all of those who served with you along the way who have since retired, we certainly want to say thank you for your service, Jimmy Hyde, and thank you to all that you've done for the residents of Indian River County during your time. We certainly appreciate your service, and we will be honoring you again at the Sheriff's Office in the coming days of your retirement. And of course, this is a new thing. I want to thank the Commissioner for doing this proclamation. We're going to be doing proclamations for folks who do more than 25 years of service going forward. And additionally, Jimmy Hyde will be promoted to honorary captain as part of his retirement as well. So congratulations on your retirement. You're always welcome at the Sheriff's Office. Come by, you're part of the family, and we want to see you often.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Mom?
She's still concerned about the four-letter word.
I saw her shriek.
I'm sitting here going, oh, don't do it, Joe.
No, but I want to thank you all for being here. It's a very special moment for all of us here in Indian River County, and while we're sad to have Jim released into that private aura, we're glad that it's with you and he can enjoy and many years of sharing and enjoyment. So, Jim, done.
Thank you, Joey. There you go, Joe. Brian.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, sir. And I will still have the same cell phone number,
Yeah,
just so you know. My phone, they honor, they give me my cell phone number. I gotta go my phone, but I get the same phone number.
Outstanding. You want to take, family, where you going? Lisa? Jim?
Kathleen will take the picture if you want to give her, or she can.
Lieutenant, Captain, I mean, not Lieutenant. Yeah.
They're going to take some of that.
A couple of you come down on this side here.
You get in the center there, Jimmy.
There we go.
You look beautiful. Congratulations.
One more time there, Lieutenant. He's taking everybody out to breakfast or something.
I don't want to.
Michael?
We won't tell.
Thank you all. Next item on the agenda is a presentation proclamation designating the week of March 21st through 27th, 2021 as National Surveyors Week, and Commissioner Airman will be doing the honors. Do we have a surveyor or two?
Come on up.
Come on down.
We have a lot of surveyors.
Good morning, Commissioners. That's a tough act to follow there. My name is Bob Johnson. I'm the Vice President of the Indian River Chapter of Florida Surveying and Mapping Society. And first of all, I'd like to offer congratulations to Officer Hyde. Second of all, I'd like to thank the board for recognizing the surveyors of Indian River County for the things that we do in the community, and for recognizing the week of March 21st through the 27th as National Surveyors Week. Surveyors provide a vital role in the development of the nation's infrastructure and quiet enjoyment of private and public property and an orderly transfer of real property. I'm going to keep it real short and sweet today, but if anybody's interested in learning more about what surveyors do, I'd like to invite them to visit our Florida Surveying and Mapping Society website at fsms.org or our National Society of Professional Surveyors at nsps.us.com. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Airman.
Well, gentlemen, if I may, I've done a lot of things so far being a commissioner, but this is a unique opportunity to honor the surveyors who are probably one of the most unheralded groups probably in the United States, if not the world, because without them, we wouldn't know where we're going. So I appreciate all you do. So I'm honored to read this proclamation. Proclamation designating the week of March 21st to the 27th, 2021 as National Surveyors Week. Whereas land surveyors are counted among the founding leaders of our county and were instrumental in the formation of the layout of property boundaries in the United States, providing our citizens the opportunity to enjoy the American dream of property ownership. And whereas United States Presidents Washington, Jefferson, Adams, and Lincoln all served as surveyors, contributing to the historical mapping of America in its early years. And whereas the surveying profession requires special education, training, knowledge of mathematics and related physical and applied sciences, and requirements of law for evidence. And whereas surveyors are uniquely qualified and licensed to determine and describe land and water boundaries for the management of natural resources and protection of private and public property rights. And whereas the continual advancement in instrumentation have required the survey to not only be able to understand and implement the methods of the past, but also learn and employ modern technology as changes occur through the years. And whereas the citizens of Indian River County recognize the valuable contributions of the surveying profession to history, development, and quality of life throughout our county, and make important decisions based on the knowledge and expertise of licensed surveyors and mappers. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, that the week of March 21st through the 27th, 2021, be designated as National Surveyors Week in Indian River County, and the board encourages all citizens to recognize the many contributions and ongoing dedication of surveyors to our community and throughout the United States. Adopted on the 16th day of March 2021 and signed by all 5 county commissioners. Gentlemen, I appreciate what you do, and I do know a few of you personally, and I know that it's your passion, and it's again, I think it's a very unheralded, because I truly believe if certainly we didn't have surveyors, we wouldn't know where we're going or where we could be or where we could stop or where we could go. So again, I appreciate all you do. So, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you for all you do. but I want to say something to the public. The surveyors that you see out in the field, they're wearing orange for a reason. Let's please respect what they do and what they're doing in your community and give yield to the individuals that are wearing orange or brightly colored clothing, because they do it for their safety and your safety. So give heed. Thank you.
Come on up.
Dave, how are you, buddy? I'm great. Dave? Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes. A few words. Thank you.
Good to see you this morning.
We're in.
Good to see you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you for all you do. Thank you.
Got it?
Got a whole crowd today.
All right, now leave.
Thank you, guys.
Who's out there on the road?
Good. Thank you, everybody.
Congratulations, guys.
Thank you all. Next item on the agenda is a presentation proclamation designating March 2021 as American Red Cross Month. Presenting will be Commissioner Susan Adams, and I believe we're doing this on a video.
I believe the Red Cross is online, so I'll go ahead and read the proclamation. It's my pleasure to read a proclamation designating March 2021 as American Red Cross Month. Whereas the American Red Cross touches millions of lives each year as they carry out the organization's 140-year mission of preventing and alleviating suffering. And whereas here in Indian River County, local families rely on American Red Cross volunteers for comfort and hope while coping with disasters. And whereas during these most trying times of the COVID-19 pandemic, the South Florida Red Cross provides food, shelter, financial assistance, and comfort to individuals and families in need, as well as casework, guidance, and much more to help survivors recover from disasters large and small, and all at no cost to the recipients. And whereas last year our local Red Cross chapter responded to more than 210 disasters and trained over 500 volunteers in disaster response, with Red Cross volunteers especially addressing the urgent needs of Indian River County residents affected by home fires with food, lodging, and other recovery support. And whereas Treasure Coast American Red Cross volunteers support local families in many other ways, such as providing critical safety and disaster readiness training, installing free smoke alarms, and creating fire preparedness plans. And whereas the life-saving work of the Red Cross is vital to strengthening our community's resilience, in nearly 200 years since the birth of founder Clara Barton, they continue to advance her noble legacy and commitment to caring for people in need. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners, Indian River County, Florida, that the month of March 2021 be designated as Red Cross Month in Indian River County, and that the board encourages all citizens to support this organization through volunteering and charitable giving in its noble humanitarian mission to alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. Adopted the 16th day of March and signed by all 5 county commissioners. And I'd just like to thank the Red Cross for what they do in our community. They do amazing work and are a vital part of helping protect our citizens and respond to home fires and other disasters. And I don't know, Kim, if they're online and want to say a few words?
Yes, hi. Thank you for having me here today, and thank you for recognizing the vital role that the American Red Cross plays in Indian River County. I'm Edith Carpenter, the Community Volunteer Leader for the American Red Cross South Florida region, Treasure Coast. The mission of the Red Cross is to prevent and alleviate human suffering, and it is a work that is carried out by our local volunteers daily with the generosity of our donors. Last year, the South Florida Red Cross provided food, shelter, financial assistance, casework, and comfort to individuals and families in need, to help survivors recover from disasters both large and small. And all Red Cross assistance is free. And in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, the Red Cross continues to meet the urgent need for blood and platelets. Last year, we collected and distributed over 19,000 units of convalescent plasma nationally to treat people actively fighting the coronavirus. People know that they can rely on us to provide free assistance when and where it is most needed. Whether it's home fires, floods, weather-related emergencies, services to the armed forces, blood services, training services, and more. So on behalf of our volunteers and our staff and the citizens of Indian River County whom we serve, thank you, Board of Commissioners, for your ongoing support and for recognizing the Red Cross and its important role in emergency and disaster relief services in Indian River County. Thank you.
Thank you. Votes first. And we'll ensure you get that proclamation so it can be conspicuously displayed.
Most definitely.
Thank you all for what you do. We'll now move on to the informational items. There was a proclamation honoring James Cairns on his retirement for Indian River County Board of County Commissioners, Department of Public Works and Road and Bridge Division with 30 years of service. We want to congratulate him on his well-served career, and please remember him as you're traveling the roadways. He probably had a big part to play in it. So thank you and congratulations, Jim. Anything further on the informational items? We'll move on to the quarterly tourist development tax report for the quarter ending 12/31/20. And we're looking at the consent agenda. Is there anyone that wishes to pull any item from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, since you mentioned, I did want to pull the item 8A, the Tourist Development Tax Report.
I assume so. That's why I can. Thank you. Item 8A, anything further? Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to have anything pulled for further discussion or clarification? Anyone on the internet? Seeing none?
Move to approve as amended.
That's a motion by Vice Chairman O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. With that, Commissioner O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Folks, item 8A is our quarterly tourist development tax report compiled by the Clerk of Court's office that collects the tourist tax. And Jeff, just kind of a really interesting change here in my mind, compared to the quarter a year ago, that the tourist tax collected from short-term rentals showed a pretty significant increase, while tourist tax collected from the hotel motel industry showed a fairly significant decrease in tourist tax revenue. And so I'm guessing maybe a couple things going on here is one, obviously with the pandemic, my guess would be that a lot of families, maybe that were coming down here, didn't want to stay in a crowded hotel, so that renting a house would give them more isolation, things like that. So a little shift there. And then maybe because of the travel and stuff, some of the hotels had to lower their room rates, which would result in lower revenue. Is that kind of your thoughts on it, or how did you see this going on?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner O'Brien. That's exactly what we surmise, is that the perception is people feel safer in a home by themselves than they would in a hotel with crowds and in the lobby and at the facilities. Also, February 1st was the first anniversary of our agreement with VRBO and HomeAway. We'd already had one with Airbnb, and that's proving to be fruitful as well. The third thing is that you got to remember that short-term rentals vary on when they rent and when they don't rent. So, but our main goal, our main guess is that people feel more safer in a residential house than they would in a hotel. That's correct.
And then, so Jeff, it'll be interesting to see the next quarter results, because I have been down the beach a few times, and the hotels look jam-packed. I mean, and Jason had an anecdotal story for me that I think some of the room rates have come back up. So we'll probably see some type of recovery in the hotel motel revenue. But I think a very interesting dynamic there with the pandemic and how people responded. So it seems like they were still coming here to visit. They just wanted to be a little bit more isolated. So pretty interesting. Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll move approval of the item 8A.
That's a motion by Vice Chairman O'Brien, seconded by myself. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously, and thank you for that. And at this moment, I'd like to thank you, Vice Chairman O'Brien, for your continued trips to Tallahassee in fighting for our home rule for vacation rentals, as other counties are looking at what we're doing and why our numbers are so well in the tourism arena, and a lot has to part and play with the vacation rental. So I just wanted to thank you for your continued journeys to Tallahassee. With that, I'd like to move on to the constitutional officers and governmental agencies, and we have Indian River County Sheriff Eric Flowers regarding an update on the security project for Indian River County Sheriff's Office. Good morning, Sheriff, once again.
Good morning again, Commissioners. Thank you so much. Back in November and December, individually, you each came to visit me at the Sheriff's Office. We took tours and talked about some security concerns that I had about our campus. Then I came back to you in February and presented a proposal to change some funding that already existed to use that money, $750,000, for these security enhancements. Last week, we provided a letter that included several quotes. There's really 4 phases to this project. One is fencing, one is security access, one is our visitation building, and one is the front lobby. And as you'll note on the summary page, which is the last portion of this, and all of this is attached to your official agenda for today, the total project at this point, if we went with the lowest bids that have come in thus far, which we're still waiting for some bids, the project would come in at about $674,000. As we all know, things always happen during these projects that rise prices, and we find something in the process that we didn't account for. So I feel confident that if we move forward at $674,000, we'll be able to cover it with the funds that you have allocated. So having said that, if there's any questions about the project or what we plan to do, I'm here to answer them today. And want to be, as we spoke before with Commissioner, completely transparent about this project so people know what they're getting for their tax dollars.
So, Sheriff, I don't know, we never have any overruns or hidden things with our projects. I don't know.
No, of course not.
I want to thank you for bringing this forward. I was one of the ones that asked for the transparency when you came before, so I really appreciate you putting it down here, and it's pretty clear and concise. So I think anybody that just wants to go on our website and look at the backup, they can see exactly where those dollars are going for and what they're doing. So I really appreciate you doing this. I think it's a really good thing. I think it's good for us as ones voting on it, but also for the general public. So thank you for that. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be pleased to go ahead and move staff or the sheriff's request.
Second. I'm going to throw it. That's a motion by Vice Chairman O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you
5-0,
very
Sheriff.
much. Thank you so much. I do want to thank County Administrator Jason Brown and Rich. They're subsidizing some of the costs of this by doing some things with Road and Bridge to assist us in the project as well. So we're certainly grateful for that assistance and also for all the commissioners. And we'll begin work on this almost immediately. So thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Sheriff, before you go, Mr. Chairman, if I may, just, Sheriff, I know you recently had your youth, Sheriff's Youth Ranch event. I came through and got a couple meals to go and enjoyed that very much, but it looked like you had a good crowd there. You want to spend a minute just telling us how things went?
Yeah, thank you to the community who came out and joined us for that. We raised a record $68,000 for the Florida Sheriff's Youth Ranches at $5 per meal. So thank you for coming through the line. I know County Administrator Brown came through the line as well. Several of you stopped by to visit us. We certainly appreciate you being there. The drive-through was wildly successful. That was a plan that we put in place due to COVID. We're going to continue to do that for going forward. We were very close to running out of food, and we raised so much money that we couldn't even expect it to be in a COVID year to have more money raised. So just an amazing program. We're going to continue doing that, and thank you for your help and support.
Yeah, no, the drive-through thing went really smooth. I thought it was very quick and efficient, and you had lots of people there working the line, so it moved pretty good. So it was a very positive experience. Yeah.
We'll definitely do that in years to come. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, sir. Next item on the agenda is item 10A1, which is a quasi-judicial matter. It's a public hearing for a request by Crest Residential LLC to rezone approximately 27.69 acres from RS6 residential single family up to 6 units per acre to PD plan development, and to obtain conceptual PD plan approval for the project for known as the Griffin North PD, located as south of 26th Street, approximately 1,650 feet east of 82nd Avenue. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding. The parties of the proceeding are Indian River County and Crest Residential LLC. At this time, I'll need to ask each commissioner if they can disclose any ex parte communications, site visits, or independent investigations. Vice Chairman O'Brien.
I have had none, Mr. Chairman.
I have had done also.
I have had none.
I drive that general area on the way here on a regular basis, but I have had none of the other.
Yes, and I might add that I might attend St. John of the Cross and pass that area quite frequently. And as a deputy, I served that area for many years, but I have no knowledge of what is to take place here today.
I have had none.
Can we confirm from each commissioner to have an open mind and the ability to base their decision on the evidence presented and applicable law? Vice Chairman O'Brien?
Can and will.
Yes, absolutely.
Can and will?
Can and will.
Can and will.
Thank you all. At this time, we'll open the public hearing and ask the clerk to swear in all witnesses collectively. If anyone wishes to speak, anticipated to speak, please rise and be sworn in. Madam Clerk.
Swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
We'll begin this hearing with a presentation by county staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. For the record, Scott Rodriguez with the Planning Division. The item before you is Crest Residential's request for the Griffin North PD rezoning and conceptual plan approval. This slide briefly shows the PD rezoning process. The first step of the process is the PD rezoning conceptual plan's recommendation by the Planning and Zoning Commission with final action by the Board of County Commissioners. I will summarize the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation a little later in the presentation. Today's final action is part of the first step. Additional steps include preliminary PD plan approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission, land development permit approval by staff, and final PD plan approval by the Board of County Commissioners. The 27.69 acre vacant subject site is located south of 26th Street, east of 82nd Avenue, and has a single-family residential designation. The overall aerial depicts the subject site, surrounding areas, and existing conditions of the site. This additional aerial depicts the proposed conceptual PD project. The conceptual plan is proposing 166 multifamily units consisting of townhomes and apartments, a driveway interconnection connecting the Griffin North and Griffin South projects, and PD waivers are not being requested for this project. I do want to note that I will mention the Griffin South project a few times during this presentation. The Griffin South application is currently under review with staff as a major site plan and is not part of this conceptual PD. This is the overall conceptual PD plan depicting the general layout of the proposed uses and site improvements. Traffic circulation plan includes a required westbound turn lane on 26th Street at the project's driveway connection. Primary access to the development will be provided with the full access driveway connection to 26th Street. Internal roadway connection to connect to 20th Street. Driveway interconnection from Griffin North to Griffin South will be required. Stormwater ponds located on the site will be part of the master stormwater system. The conceptual landscape plan is proposing setbacks and buffers to ensure compatibility with surrounding areas adjacent to the site, including a 50-foot urban service area buffer to the north. A 25-foot type B buffer with a 6-foot opaque feature is proposed in coordination with staff to the west and south, and required 25-foot PD setbacks along the east and southeast property boundaries. In addition to the landscape buffers, to ensure compatibility, the proposed conceptual PD plan provides a required 25-foot PD setbacks and proposes increased building setbacks. Dedications, improvements, and conditions include the 26th Street turn lane, internal sidewalk pedestrian system, street lighting, interconnection between Griffin North and Griffin South, and public benefits include driveway interconnection between Griffin North and Griffin South, increased setbacks, and increased perimeter landscape buffering. At its February 11th, 2021 meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously to recommend the Board of County Commissioners grant PD rezoning and conceptual PD plan approval. Staff is recommending that the Board of County Commissioners approve the PD rezoning and conceptual PD plan for Griffin North with conditions listed in staff's report related to site improvements and plans. And that concludes my presentation.
That concludes the presentation.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, any questions of staff at this time?
Mr. Chairman, go ahead, Susan. Go ahead.
I have one question. If the Griffin South project doesn't move forward, obviously there would not be an interconnection, so there would just be one entrance and exit for this project? Because I understand it's in review right now, so.
Sure. For the record, Ryan Sweeney, Chief of Current Development. Yeah, Commissioner Adams. No, actually, we're tying the two together in that it's essentially has to be approved and built. The only way this project works is that they are both.
Both of them go through.
Correct.
Okay. I just
So
want
we're kind of tying one to the other and vice versa.
Okay, because I think that interconnection is important.
Yeah, the traffic flow for that area to work ideally is for them to be able to go both directions.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chairman O'Brien.
Thank you. Kim, can you go back to the presentation, please, and find the slide that has the aerial view on it, please? So, Scott, currently, this property has a zoning for single-family residential at up to 6 units per acre. Is that correct? Okay, go back a little bit, Kim. Keep going.
There it is.
There, that one. Okay. Oh, go back. There you go. So currently, it's single-family residential. Is that correct?
Correct.
Up to 6 units per acre. No, Kim, go.
You want it?
That one there. Okay. Freeze. So, Scott, if it was developed as single-family residential, then most of that property would actually be filled with single-family homes because their footprint is much larger than the multifamily. Is that correct?
Correct.
So for the neighboring properties going to the multifamily and the way this is configured, it's really pushing the units further away from those boundary lines than if it was developed under the current zoning. Is that correct?
The buildings and the site improvements are actually moving much further away from the property, the west and the south property lines, correct.
So not only will it have that 25-foot buffer, but just looking at this picture, the north-south part of the driveway there, to the west, you got a stormwater pond and then some open space and then the 25-foot buffer. So that's a pretty significant distance in my mind from the current development. On the south end of it, you still got the drive there and then some open space and the 25-foot buffer on the south boundary. And is that correct?
Correct.
So it seems to me that going this way really moves all the living space is much further from the existing neighborhoods around them. Is that fair to say?
Correct. The setbacks that are being proposed far exceed what are required.
Right, okay. All right, good. Thank you very much. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Is it? Anyone else?
Ron or Scott, the Griffin South, I know we're not talking about that, but what is the tentative plans for that? Is that multifamily housing, or is that
It's
very similar to what this is here?
Absolutely, yeah. It's the same concept, same similar layout. It just kind of curves down through the south piece and connects to State Road 60.
Okay, good. That's all I have.
I did have a follow-up, Mr. Chairman. Scott, compared to single-family versus multifamily, is there any significant difference in traffic flow between the two? Do we have a feel for that?
Sure. Oh, you want to take this one? I can jump in there.
Sure. I'll speak in general.
Wait, I saw Scott looks to the right, Ryan looks to the right. It went right down the road of Phil.
Or we could all talk at once. Let me start for the record. Phil Mattson, Community Development Director. And it's generally, a single-family residence is smaller. It doesn't have an extended family in it. Typically, it's about 60% of the trips generated per day that a single family would have. So it's more akin to about 5 trips versus 7 or 8 for a single-family resident. The only way you're going to get people out of the car at all is to have some multifamily residences together. You can serve them easier with public transportation, bicycling, walking, that sort of thing. And this is about the best way you can do it. It's got connectivity. You talked about buffering from the neighbors. You got a little extra space you mentioned, 300 feet of extra space to be exact. That is a huge buffer, and that was a popular issue. And this did pass, unanimously with the P&Z for all of those elements. So, yeah, it generates less traffic, it maintains connectivity, and potentially it provides the opportunity to make trips via another mode.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Follow up, I may also the going from RM6 to PD, they actually reduced it slightly, even though it's pretty much the same, but it actually reduced the.
It is right at 6 units per acre. They technically could go to 8 under their land use, so they're at 6 where they can be.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Anything further? Do we have a presentation by Chris Residential, LLC? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Steve Moeller from Ldr Moeller, Vice President of the firm and a professional engineer in the state of Florida. With me today are 2 of my clients, Bentley Nelson and Matt Benak. They are from Crest Residential. Bruce Barquette is here as our attorney, and Josh Black from LTG is the traffic consultant. We don't have a formal presentation. Scott and Ryan gave a great presentation, and Commissioner O'Brien stole all my thoughts. But I will add that when we looked at this site, recognizing that to the east is Indian River Estates and to the west is Westside Villas and Wildwood, and although one is zoned RS1 and the other one is zoned RS6, but even that RS6 subdivision is built with larger lots than are really allowed in the RS6, excuse me, they're much larger than the minimum size, I should say. So we recognize that to do a multifamily project, there's two paths. One would be to rezone to multifamily and then do a site plan, or versus to do a PD. And we felt that the PD process would give the residents and the county more protection in that we build into the plan the setback that was mentioned. We've agreed to a 300-foot setback for the for the three-story buildings to keep them away from the westerly property line. So, and the easement, excuse me, the connection between the two projects, north and south, as was mentioned, there will be that connection so you could drive, the residents can either go into State Road 60 entrance or 26th Street, and that easement has been secured because the corner of these two properties, they don't overlap. So we had to, our client negotiated with the Pine Creek community and was able to acquire an easement to allow a road to cross between the two communities. So that easement has been obtained. So, but we're here to answer any questions that you might have relating to the project.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions of
Mr.
any member of the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, just one comment for full transparency. I did run into Steve Saturday afternoon at a local sandwich shop, and we talked about a few things, but other than I'll see you Tuesday, that was the only discussion, so we didn't talk anything specific about this project. But I did want to mention, I did run into Steve personally on Saturday, so that's all.
Thank you. We appreciate the clarification. So, seeing nothing further on any questions, we'll move forward with any input from the public. Is there any member of the public that wishes to add to this quasi-judicial hearing? Do we have anybody on the internet? Seeing none, do we have any final presentation or argument, if any, by county staff? We'll rest. Any further comments from Crest Residential? Bruce? Just wanted to hear your voice. The latter is correct. Anything further? At this time, I'd like to make sure that all documents and tangible evidence, if any, have been admitted to the evidence and are in the hands of the clerk. Madam Clerk? County staff agenda materials are automatically admitted into evidence unless there is any objection. At this time, I'll motion to close the public hearing. Commissioners?
Mr. Chair, unless there's input from my fellow commissioners, I would be happy to move staff's recommendation.
Second.
Upon motion by Commissioner Adams, seconded by Vice Chairman O'Brien. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. That was a good thing we didn't hear from Bruce.
I was hoping Dylan would have a legal question, just so Bruce could get up and say something, you know, just.
I will work on that for our next quasi-judicial item.
Thank you.
All I can say is when you asked about the traffic, our community development director he was all excited. He chimed right in.
Yeah, leopard can't change his spots.
Thank you, Mr. Mattson. Next item is a public discussion item. It's a request to speak by Ken Hendricks and Spencer Simmons regarding commercial businesses in agricultural districts. Are they here and present? And yes, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Used to be a little thing here you could put slides on. Is that still here? Okay. My name is Spencer Simmons. I own the property at 7350 37th Street. I want to first congratulate the two new commissioners for vanquishing their opponents and becoming part of this commission. That being said, I know that there's two new commissioners on this board, so I wanted to go over a couple items that the old board had previously looked at and discussed. So if you give me a few minutes to do that, and that's why I was looking for the little board. All right. Go. I put together a little timeline. This process that we're getting ready to discuss, myself and Mr. Hendricks and maybe a couple other individuals, was a long time in the process. It began back in April of 2018. And in that, what had happened at that point was that Brian and Kelly Stoltz had applied for an exemption to build a non-residential farm building. And it was a metal building. The use of the structure was the storage of farm equipment and administrative work. And they were going to use it as a tree farm and cattle. What had happened after that was, as you can see here, a code enforcement opened a case. Somebody, and it wasn't me, had brought up the fact that there was a large commercial building built and a commercial operation was ongoing on the property. And this is in Ag 1. Ag 1, of course, is residential, one house per 5 acres, and Ag 2, of course, one house per 10 acres. If you look here, the Thomas Allard had put in the violation of no building permit, violation of building code, and zoning district use violation. What he had seen out there was a commercial fleet of lawn mowing trucks, trailers, transporting lawn mowing, edgers, etc. This is what was built, an 8,000 square foot building. Not a farm structure. As you can see here, you have Caribbean Lawn Mowing Services. Maybe you can read a little bit. They did pest control, irrigation, etc. Here's another one. You can see maybe a little better of what was on their vehicles. And this is what brought my attention to this issue. I do own a property on that block, but as you can see, what we had was realtors putting out for sale property in the Ag 1, Ag zoning district, west of 66, perfect for a landscaper with lots of trucks. No HOA. And then on this property, the adjacent 12 acres to the west was available for a total of 20 acres. Desirable street with many fine homes. So we were looking to build commercial properties on a area of Ag 1 that had farms, ranchettes, etc. Now, at that time, code enforcement put together their case, and they went to, they had a code enforcement hearing, and the code enforcement officer, on his professional judgment, determined that they were in violation and that the board needed to adjudicate the blatant violations. But what we witnessed was code enforcement staff advocating to the Code Enforcement Board to allow Caribbean Lawn to operate without any repercussions their commercial lawn mowing business. The Code Enforcement Board brought up the fact, and this was the board that was sitting, that there was no ag activity, that this was a clear violation stated by the charges brought by the Code Enforcement officer, and their commercial lawn mowing business could not be an accessory use to a tree farm or nursery because that didn't exist. And everybody at that time accepted the fact that there was no tree farm, there was no ag business whatsoever on the property. Staff continued their support for a business which was in clear violation and should not have been allowed to operate there. The board stated that the cart was way before the horse, and it should have ended then. But the staff encouraged the Code Enforcement Board to give them time to start their ag business. They suggested that they give them 90 days to start. Oh, tree farms are not a 90-day operation, maybe tomatoes, but not trees. This would allow them to be the primary business, the tree farm, to an accessory business, the commercial lawn mowing business. After seeing what had just transpired, Tim Campbell and I requested to speak before the Board of County Commissioners. That was approximately 2 years ago that we brought this before the Board of County Commission. On March 5th, 2019, Tim Campbell and I appeared before the board to protest the code enforcement ruling which allowed the commercial business to operate in the agricultural zone area. I used a PowerPoint presentation displaying images of the building, commercial vehicles is what you saw here, and traffic at the property. We felt that the violations that Caribbean Lawn and Landscaping had been cited for by erecting a building without a permit and violating the zoning use of the property should have been grounds enough for them to cease operations. And that property also has a rental facility in it, or I wouldn't say rental, but they have people living in the building. And nothing to this date has ever been done. I even brought this to code enforcement and they said, leave it alone, we ain't touching it. The Code Enforcement Board ruling didn't make sense, allowing the business to continue operation contingent upon the completion of a planned commercial nursery almost a year after filing the affidavit. Commissioner Solari expressed concerns at that Board of County Commission meeting that this company was, in his words, gaming the system by using the wholesale nursery business as a gateway for the off-site lawn mowing operation. All of the other commissioners at that time expressed similar views and cited examples of companies that were keeping with the intention of the code. The consensus of the board was that while they could not interfere in the ongoing case, they would like to consider modification to their code that would prevent misrepresentation or abuse of zoning rules. The county administrator and staff were instructed to research modifications to the code that would balance the needs of agricultural and agricultural commercial businesses. On June 18th, 2019, the Community Development Director, Stan Bowling, at that time, and Environmental Planning and Code Enforcement Chief, Roland DuBois, offered an overview of the businesses in the A1 agricultural zoning and provided the board with a proposed draft ordinance that could be used as a pending ordinance during the formal Ldr amended process. It would apply to any newly established landscape and lawn mowing businesses and a new expansion or changes to an existing business that is zoned in A1, A2, or A3. And again, I've heard this by members of the board here and people in the audience about Ag 1. In Ag 1, residential is in it. Ag 2, residential is in it. Residential, 1 house per 5 acres. So it is zoned residential and it has commercial or commercial agricultural aspects to it. That has nothing to do with commercial businesses. Commissioner Adams suggested that the Agricultural Advisory Committee should look at the topic and provide feedback and recommendations. She clarified that the Agricultural Advisory Committee recommendations would go before the Planning and Zoning Board, allowing for public input prior to returning to future County Commission meetings, which will also allow for public input. The proposed Ldr Amendment by county staff on June 18 did not address any of the concerns we brought up. This Ldr Amendment was specifically written that would codify in the LDR allowing commercial lawn mowing companies into ag districts. A business that is supposed to be in heavy commercial and industrial zoning districts was now in ag. Our current LDR regulations, landscaping services as a principal contractor trade type of use, and is to be in heavy commercial and or industrial districts where storage of vehicles, equipment, and various supplies and materials are allowed. That is in the code. I just quoted it verbatim. This was in the backup material that staff provided to the Commission at the June 18, 2019 meeting. But their LDR amendment was specific in allowing commercial lawn mowing companies into ag districts, even though our current LDR has it in heavy commercial and industrial districts. Think about that for a moment. This type of business is supposed to be located and operated in these zoning districts, non-residential zoning districts. This is done so they don't significantly have adverse impact upon nearby properties. This is part of the current LDR. The type of business that are in heavy commercial and industrial districts are not allowed in neighborhoods. Nobody wants them next door to their homes, farms, ranches. So if this is the case, why do we now want to allow them to be in the ag districts where you do have farms, homes, and ranches? Staff proposed an alternative LDR amendment which would allow off-site accessory landscape businesses subject to certain criteria and approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission under an administrative permit review. It was stating that a standalone lawn mowing service would not be allowed, which I believe is the only reason we are here. But what we saw happen already was that someone could game the system. Caribbean Lawn, as well as Tropical Property Management, Mr. Hendricks, thorn in his side, are standalone lawn mowing service companies that have been established for more than 15 years. In Caribbean Lawn cases, there was no established tree farm or any farm activity whatsoever. And that was stated right in before the board of the County Commission and before the Code Enforcement Board. On August 12th, I paid $1,500 and presented the Simmons-Campbell LDR Amendment. And for the next 9 months, Ken Hendricks and I, as well as a number of other citizens, Tim Campbell, Brian Quant, who owns White Rabbit Acres, went to Agricultural Advisory Committee meetings and Planning and Zoning Commission meetings trying to advocate for a common sense LDR regulation to address this ongoing issue, which was only going to get worse and not better, as you can see from the advertisement. This was being advertised to be done out in the Ag 1 districts. It was clear that Caribbean Lawn was not and is not an accessory use to a non-existent tree farm, but the primary business being used on the property. Since mowing grass has nothing to do with farming, it has nothing to do with the Right to Farm Act, or farming in general. I think Mr. O'Brien had said that he doesn't get up on Saturday and tell his wife he's going out to farm as he mows his yard. Nowhere can anyone find any documentation that states that off-site lawn mowing services constitutes farming or agricultural work. Even the federal regulations state that planting and lawn mowing, states in Section B that the planting of trees and bushes on residential business or public property is not agriculture when it is done by employees of an employer who has not grown the trees and bushes, or who, if he has grown them, engages in the planting operations as incidental, which is what it would be. Their main business is mowing lawns. On March 3rd, 2020, the Board of County Commission meeting, a year after our first bringing this to the attention of the Board of County Commission, on that agenda that day was consideration of alternative land development regulations. The LDR amendment proposals to define, regulate, and establish criteria for off-site accessory landscaping services. and agricultural zoning districts. There were 4 proposed LDR amendments before the board to consider. There was 2 from staff, their first proposal, and then they did an alternative proposal, mine, and I believe Mr. Hendricks, who also had to pay $1,500 to put his amendment on here. So we had skin in the game. We weren't just, throwing out a lot of issues. We were putting something here. We were trying to work with the system to put something forward to protect ag land. During discussions, Commissioner O'Brien expressed his concerns regarding staff's second alternative proposal and the attempt to quantify an accessory use business. This was to say if you had 51% of the property used for supposedly agriculture, the other 49 could be used for anything you wanted. And I believe Mr. O'Brien was correct that you can't quantify this. This has to do with your accessory and what that meant. Additional discussions continued between commissioners and staff regarding the LDR proposals, balanced regulations, and hypothetical scenarios. After the public weighed in on the debate, a motion was made by Commissioner Solari and seconded by Commissioner Fletcher to deny staff's second alternative ordinance amendment presented to the board. Additionally, the board requested that staff return with a new ordinance which included language eliminating off-site commercial landscaping business, particularly entailing lawn maintenance, from operating on an agriculturally zoned land. This was basically the Simmons-Campbell Amendment, and they'd asked staff to take that, put it in verbiage that would be legal. That motion carried 4-1. Mrs. Adams, Commissioner Adams, was the only one that voted against it. County staff was to set up 2 hearings. The first was set for April 7th, 2020, and it was postponed till July 14th, 2020. It was again postponed till October 6th at that meeting. Then on October 6, 2020, the BCC meeting, Phil Mattson, Community Development Director, provided a recap of the 4 ordinance proposals and revisions which led to the current revision prohibiting lawn care businesses in agricultural zoning districts, while still allowing certain landscape services protected under the Right to Farm Act. This was a culmination of 19 months worth of work. This amendment came from a motion that was made by Commissioner Solari and seconded by Commissioner Fletcher, who had at the time felt that these lawn mowing services, his words, were only growing trucks, not trees. Now Commissioner Fletcher opposed the ordinance after originally voting for it. A motion was made by Commissioner Fletcher, seconded by Commissioner Zork, who also originally voted for it, to cease pursuit of amendment to the county's development regulations regarding lawn care service businesses and revert back to the existing. And the motion carried by a 3-2 vote. So after all this time, it just disappeared. And I spent a lot of time on this. I'm taking off work like I am now. I actually have to work in Orlando for the type of work that I do. So, I travel back and forth just so I can live in Indian River County. In order for county citizens and taxpayers to participate in this process, you had to pay money to put your LDR amendment forward. And I think Mr. Hendricks had stated in one of our hearings that it seemed like all we were getting was the bum rush every time we tried to speak about this. At the ag meeting, at the planning and zoning, it was basically pushing us off to the side. And we were here trying to advocate for something better for our community. Brian Quant, and I believe you guys might have gotten an email from him. He was not able to be here. He's up north. In his email, if you give me a second, I thought some interesting points that he had made in that email. If you haven't got it, I can be sure you do get it. And he stated part of it is, while he is allowed to have an on-site business that is an accessory to and subordinate of principal use of agricultural property, The Caribbean Lawn Care Service is clearly not the case. The only criteria the county seems to use to decide what the principal use of an agricultural land is area measurement. It's been pointed out that by using this method of determination, it can be and resulted in a situation where basically 51% of the property is occupied by something that vaguely resembles agriculture, and the remaining 49%, 4.9 acres of a 10-acre tract, is available for multi-storage, large commercial buildings, non-agricultural related materials and parking of commercial vehicles, employee parking. Unless there is a proposal for a more accurate and realistic way of determining the principal business use of agricultural land, this pervasive problem will continue in Indian River County. As one of the few legitimate farmers, and this is Mr. Quant, and he owns White Rabbit Acres, lives next door to this property. As one of the few legitimate farmers left to this county, I see this entire situation as abuse of the right to farm laws. I make this statement to illustrate this is not necessarily a case of suburbia versus agriculture. Commercial lawn care is not agriculture. This is not my opinion, but a legal fact. It is also a legal fact that these lawn care businesses have falsified the agricultural exemption affidavit by intentionally misrepresented their intent use of the building. Therefore, this is not merely a code violation. Therefore, there is no way to mitigate these situations with code enforcement to bring the business into compliance. They exist under a false pretext. As I see it, the only way to make these businesses compliant in agricultural areas is to change their business model from being primarily off-site lawn maintenance to a business that is classified as agriculture. In most cases involved, this would be a tree farm or wholesale plant nursery as their primary business, which would require a major reconstruction of their business model, that which may not be economically viable. What I'm asking here is that it only took, after 2 years, over 2 years, 19 months, and then 2 years, we're at it at this point, it just took one person to throw it out and then 3 votes. And I'm asking that we turn around and reinstate what was previously done. We can put back the pending ordinance, because all that took was a simple vote, and that's what they did. The staff said, we'll put a pending ordinance in. They said, fine. They voted for it. This at least stopped the progression into the ag lands of these commercial lawn mowing businesses, which should be commercial ag or zoning areas. And then go back to doing the 2 meetings. You just make a simple vote, because all it took was a simple vote to end it. It should just take a simple vote to put it back on the agenda. And start back with having your 2 hearings and move forward with this. If we don't, what we're going to end up having is this. All throughout the ag areas. They're going to be selling properties. You're going to be losing tax dollars. And that's one of the main reasons they're doing this. They're not looking to start a tree farm. They're not looking to do anything like that because they already did it. Caribbean Landscaping, you can go out there right now. There is no tree farm. Even the county extension gave a report to staff. They didn't give it to you guys, but they did give it to staff, which I talked to one of them that said, there's really not a tree farm out here. It barely would be considered a tree farm. So I'm just asking that we go back to what originally was done. All it took was 3 votes to end it. It can take 3 votes to put it right back to where it was. Protecting ag land. If these individuals can easily go up and down US 1, Old Dixie, where there is a number of businesses, Scott's Tree Service, there's a number of them. I didn't go through and find them all, but there's a number of businesses that are doing this. These are 20 plus vehicles. And this is not the only one. And if it continues on these 1 mile strips of streets west of 66, it's going to make everybody's life fairly miserable just to allow a business that really should not be there trying to exempt themselves using the Right to Farm Act and saying that they're farmers when clearly they're not, to destroy the livelihoods and the businesses that are legitimate out there. Like our road on 37th Street, it beat up continually just from all the traffic. And you have 20 plus trucks up and down that road every day. And again, that building right there is a large commercial building. It's used as a mechanic shop is what it's used as. And they actually have individuals living in that building. And nobody has stopped that. And if you go and you look at that, you're not allowed to have people living in these types of buildings. So I will let Mr. Hendricks speak, but I really think that it can easily begin to change. And I'm just asking that at least we put the pending ordinance back in and then do at least one of the hearings, because we already had one, do another hearing and make this right for everybody in Indian River County. Thank you.
Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the chance to come before you again today. And sorry to say, raise an old subject that's been around, like you said, for a couple of years. I'm Ken Hendricks, and I live at 62 21st Street Southwest, which Commissioner Adams will recall used to be known as R.D. Carter Road. One of the original founders of the county. There's 34 houses on that street already. There's about 3 or 4 under construction. There's an agricultural planned unit development that's on the other side of 1st Street between 1st and 5th that's underway. The development keeps going up and up in there. In other words, there are a lot of residential properties in this part of the agricultural district. In my particular case, my house was built in 1977. It was built by Mal Killam and his wife Doris, if you ever remember them. We purchased it, my wife Pamela and me purchased it in 1995. I had practiced law in Indian River County for about 30 years before that, and I guarantee you I checked the zoning ordinances before I purchased that property. There was no reference to off-site landscaping services in the code at that time. Those kinds of services were assigned to commercial districts. But then in 1997, the code was changed. Got right by me. I guess I thought I was home free. That's what you get for assuming. But nevertheless, it's in there now, and it's been a problem, and it's a festering problem, and it's going on and getting bigger and bigger, as Mr. Simmons indicated. In my particular case, there is a 20-acre parcel right next door to my property. There is about a 5-acre tree farm and a 5+ acre off-site landscaping business that does everything from brick pavers to plumbing to irrigation to spraying. And they do mow a lot of lawns using their somewhere between 10 and 20 trucks that enter and exit the premises every day. I realize there's every member on this panel here, but 2 have heard all this. So I'll try to move ahead and not go into every detail of what the problem is, but I would just like the record to reflect that our situation is very similar to Mr. Simmons and Mr. Campbell's, with one exception. The business that was located next to my property, right next to my house, by the way, even though they had 20 acres to build it on, was sold to a statewide agricultural conglomerate, I call them, because they own many, many other local landscaping companies throughout the state of Florida, so that the owner of the property that established the landscaping business no longer even owns the business, yet it continues to function there. And apparently we have no rules in place to address that problem, which is what Mr. Simmons and I were trying to do. Draft some rules, propose them to the county commission. We got all the way to the final vote when the dinner was snapped right out from under the dog's nose. We never had a chance to experience it because it was a shortcut, or it was cut off at the first of the 2 required constitutional public hearings. The second public hearing, never was held. The crux of the problem is this ratio principle. We went over that before. The other commissioners are familiar with that, except the 2 new ones. It's nowhere in the code. The code says nothing about a ratio principle, a ratio rule, which permits them to operate so long as their landscape business does not exceed 50% of their tree farm. That was a proposition and a rule that was made up in the minds of county staff. And it's a rule that is in direct conflict with the definition of accessory, which is in the code. Anyway, we ought to have a right to go over this issue again. It's not finished. I hate to say this, but it's never going to be finished unless we address it head on, make a decision on it, and quit applying that ratio rule as an excuse to allow these operations to exist. I went on longer than I intended to. I did want to show one thing. Are we on there now? Okay. How do we advance it? Don't I hit this right here? If you stop at the end of where we left off last time and go back to the very beginning, I'd like to read for you a section of the code. And I have read this section of the code every time I had an opportunity to speak. And I'm not going to read the whole section. It's the purpose and intent. It's the lead-in. It's the threshold principle. It's the mission that was established when all the agricultural zoning codes were drafted. And it says that one of the purposes it is by providing areas suitable for agriculture, silviculture, that's forestry, and the conservation and management of open space, vegetative cover, natural systems, aquifer recharge, wildlife areas, and scenic areas. These districts are also intended to provide opportunities for residential uses at very low densities, to promote housing opportunities in the county. These districts are further intended to permit activities which require non-urban locations and do not detrimentally impact lands devoted to agriculture and agricultural activities. They are intended as a buffer from urbanization, certainly not an acceptance and continued commercialization of the agricultural business of districts. I present this again, I presented it before, because it's very clear that these off-site landscaping companies, commercial, retail companies, because they deal directly with the public, are the antithesis of the purpose and intent. And I'm waiting for somebody to explain to me how the opposite is true. And I guess I'll keep on waiting because I doubt if it's going to happen here either. But nevertheless, that's our presentation. All we want is to get back on the agenda so we can rehash this. This is a shortcut version of the presentation I made back, I don't know, March a year ago. If we got to go through it again and bring it all out again, I'll go through my entire PowerPoint. I'm glad to do that too. But all we want is a chance to get back on this agenda so that we can have reconsideration of what happened before. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your input.
Hello, I'm Tim Campbell. I helped, me and Spencer did this draft here, if you can, I put this on here. When we drew this up, of course, it has some legal ads with all the codes and all that in there. But we made a mistake with this. It says right here, the reason for, I don't have the glasses. The reason for the change is not known. Clear that at this point, the change has led to unintended consequences and intentional falsification by non-ag commercial businesses. Since we wrote this up, I did a little research on taxes. You know, I don't know if everybody in the room, and I'll leave this up so you can read it, some people that don't know what it means. If you got ag exempt, you pay a lot cheaper taxes. For example, if you have a 10-acre parcel with a house on it, you're paying about $5,000 a year, residential. Your ag exempt guy, my guy down the street, pays $500 a year taxes. If you was to have a commercial piece of property, you're going to pay 20 times what that guy's paying. So it's all about taxes. A lot of it is about taxes. Not only when you get a piece of property and it's not commercial, you pay less for it. Now you're paying less taxes for it. So everybody in this room, I'm sure everybody should have to pay their share of taxes. Not only are they gaming the system by buying a piece of property at less than value of a commercial piece of property, every year they're getting by not paying their fair share of taxes. 10% less than you all are paying for your houses, at least, and 20% less if you own a commercial business trying to compete with these people. Now, that is the reason that was implied back then. And if anybody can do any research on the tax codes, and you can see that. So why does the normal homeowner paying $5,500 a year for taxes? This guy's got a multi-million-dollar business going. He's paying $500 a year. Is that the answer we're looking for? To give these people a tax break? Is that who I would like to know who made this rule right here? Was it to help his buddy come down here and make a nice big landscaping business and pay nothing for taxes compared to the homeowners or other business owners in this county? I think that's the point we need to really look at. Nobody knows how many, 45 people to take care of 13 trees. I mean, come on. It's right there. It's plain and simple. And if you want me to have my people research it and get out how much everybody's paying for taxes, I know I looked at it. I had the figures out before. But I know it's been a drawn-on process today, and I just wanted to bring that up. And that's my point, that we need to install Campbell-Simmons bill to make sure that everybody pays their share of taxes, especially multi-million-dollar landscaping businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
I can't speak for Commissioner Moss down there, but yes, this is fairly new to me. This happened prior to us coming on board. I have spoken with Mr. Hendricks once or twice about this. I've tried to look at it. I haven't been able to research it as much as I like, other than I did review the October 6th meeting, and I was here. And I, you know, some of the comments I agree with, some of them I didn't at the time from the board that it currently was here. I have my concerns about this, that we're doing the right thing, or that these businesses are doing the right thing with regards to where they're located and paying their taxes. I did check yesterday. The piece next to Mr. Hendricks only pays, for 20 acres, pays $847 a year. Some other lawn businesses on Osler Road area and the Willis family farms, you know, they have less acreage and they pay a lot more money than that 847, and they do the same business because they're in a different zoning issue. It's a different zoning issue. I would like to research this some more, and I'll be glad to do it on my own. And I would like to bring this back to the board at a later date to see what we can do. There may be no change, but there may be a change depending on the board's leisure. But I see a tax issue here, and I don't want us, the county, to get shortchanged. I think that's what bothers me the most when it comes from the money aspect of it, of what we're doing here. I understand, like for yourself, by some of the comments you made back on October 6th, you know, they're creating jobs, they're doing it different ways, and maybe they'll go someplace else. I don't know. I know a lot of people in the lawn and yard business, and I've never seen any of them want to leave Indian River County because it's pretty profitable here to do that. But I think we do need to take a look at it. I have not reviewed the Agricultural Advisory Committee minutes. I'm not familiar with the Campbell Simmons proposal, and have not read any of those. So I think and again, I don't want to speak for Commissioner Moss, but I know from my aspect of it, I'd like to do a little more research on this and find out some more about it, because I think there's an issue here, and I'm not for cutting the lifestyle or doing anything with regards to the businesses that are already in this area and you know, for their lifestyle and what they do. But I want to make sure that everybody's following the rules when it comes to ag exempt. When I was growing up here in Indian River County, and you talked about somebody being on an ag, and you wanted to build a house on an ag, you had to have so much in citrus according to the rules. You had to have cows. You had to have something to show ag, and so there's a difference there. And I want to make sure that the people that want to build a large home and live on ag are also following the rules. I think it's a matter of are we following the rules, and what are we doing, and are people paying their fair share, doing the right things? I don't want to be cheated or scammed by anybody, and I'm not saying anybody's doing this at this time, but I just think it's something that I, as a commissioner, would I'm not ready to take any action on it today, but I would like to look at this further and bring it back at a later time if I may. So that's really kind of all I got to say right now. I'd like to hear what anybody else has to say. I know that the three of y'all have faced this before, and I know again, this is new to Commissioner Moss and I, but I have many unanswered questions, and I'd like to see where this would go. And I don't want to say I'm beating a dead horse. I just think it's something that I want to take a look at in the future.
Mr. Chair, just a point of clarification for our new commissioners. Our policy is that we don't take any action on public discussion items. So there is nothing that we could do today. And I do have a couple of points as well. One, the county commission has nothing to do with setting a property as ag exempt. That is beyond our purview. That is the property appraiser's role. He determines if a property is eligible for an agricultural exemption solely on his rules, and there was a large discussion about that at the Ag Advisory Committee meeting. Secondly, I think it's very important to understand that anybody in an ag district, it is basically a mixed-use district. It is not a large lot subdivision. It is a district where you can have a farm next to a home, next to a dairy, next to a compost facility, next to a small farm like White Rabbit Acres, or next to a very large farm like B&W Growers or Fellsmere Farms. All of those things have a place in the ag zoning district. The issue here is not that these are standalone lawn maintenance facilities. The lawn maintenance activity is tied to horticulture, growing of trees, growing of plants, and because some of those growing of trees and plants that would afford the ancillary lawn care business to exist were not happening, it went through a code enforcement process. There's a process that is addressing the concerns of those that are gaming the system. So we spent a very long time, very many meetings going over this. I would just caution my fellow commissioners, if you are going to look into this, which is awesome and you're right to do so, that it is a slippery slope as to what and who determines what qualifies as agriculture activities, what qualifies as an ancillary activity to agriculture, and who came first. That's really what some of this boils down to. The other thing I will mention is that there is currently bills moving through the Senate and the House dealing with the Right to Farm Act. So I think it's important that we see how those play out before we do anything. I also would remind you guys that we're going through a development review process right now for different zonings and other things. We had a discussion about it at the MPO meeting recently, and that was something that kind of grew out of this issue and other issues to address what's going on in the ag enclave areas. So a lot of this stuff is being worked on. Mr. Simmons and Mr. Hendricks and everybody else has been part of this process for quite some time, right along with us for the whole 3 years now, I believe it is. And yes, they did pay money. That is the way that works. They did not like what staff's recommendation was for the LDR changes, so they wanted to propose their own changes. That's the process that we have. When those changes came back and were voted on, that's how the cookie crumbled. So they have that right, and you guys can take that up and bring it back if you so desire, but just for the history on this and the other things that are swirling around, this issue is not solely about lawn maintenance companies operating in ag areas. There's much, much more that feeds into that overall issue, and that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
If I may, Commissioner Adams, thank you. I understand completely, and I did talk to the property appraiser yesterday himself for about an hour and got some clarification on this. It's just still not right in my mind. My thing is, I want to look at make sure the county's not getting shortchanged or anything, that we're not being abused, and that we're doing the right thing by our other fellow taxpayers, and that everybody's paying their fair share and we're being fair. There may be no right answer to this. It may be, too convoluted, and we don't want to open a Pandora's box or do anything that we can't enforce as a county staff and a board of county commissioners. So those are some of my concerns. But thanks for that, because there is a lot of moving parts to this, but I think it's something that I personally want to take a look at further.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone who came in today to speak to us, to educate us with regard to what had been discussed in the past. The timeline I found interesting, and I agree with Commissioner Ehrman. It's not just a single issue. Taxes, of course, always are important, and we should look at that. But if people or entities are falsifying applications, to slide in under certain requirements, we need to look at that. I think I would request the minutes to the meetings in that timeline, and if there's anything substantial in the minutes that I can glean from them to learn what happened over time. And it does seem strange. I mean, I agree with, just topographically, what's been presented today. I agree with Commissioner Solari. It seems like he I guess at the time, said that it gave the appearance of gaming the system, and that would seem to be so from what was presented today. That would seem to be a correct assessment. Although, as I said, I'll do my homework on this, and I'll read the minutes to all these meetings to better understand. But it does, and if that timeline is correct, and my colleagues can tell me if it's not, but it seems that it was going in a very clear direction. And then all of a sudden, it changed course. Do any of my colleagues want to comment on that?
No. And again, Commissioner, I appreciate that. I keep hearing gaming the commission, gaming the rules. This is going on for 23 years. There are livelihoods, many businesses within that unincorporated area that have been established, prospered, produced jobs, and are providing a service. Where else would they do it? Now, that was according to the rules and regulations at the time. I want you all to be cautioned that you were given a timeline, and it was an editorialized timeline. There are certain things in there that were discussed that had a little level of passion by their presenter that was not actually evident during the discussion. And in order to get the full, robust understanding, it would have to be thoroughly vetted out and discussed once again. In addition, you would have to not look at the minutes, because after all, minutes are annotated. They are brief.
Minutes are minimal, yes.
They are minimalized. They are concise. However, to get the full understanding, one would have to pull all of the videos, the record of the meeting, to understand the discussion. One must also understand that there was a community that could not respond. After all, we were in COVID time towards the end. And there was, at the time, it was a different type of COVID time than it is today. There were people that did not want to leave their home, contact anybody, be present, not be present, and there was a lot of communication. As far as if it changed like that, no. Once the community was heard, when all the facts were presented, it did not make sense to move forward. So that went the way it did, and that was heard. We voted on it, and the mission was ended. We can't just throw one final hearing to this as purported by one of the speakers.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
It has to all come back.
May I ask another question?
Yes.
Since if I understand it correctly, it was going in a certain direction, and that's within the commission, and then it appears to have changed. Definitely, it changed. Do you recall, the primary reason or reasons why it changed? It seems that the people who spoke were surprised by the action that the board took. So, does anyone here remember what the primary reason or reasons were? Because I understand it went back to staff and then came to you.
I would just
Understanding
encourage you
that we
to watch the videos,
Yeah.
go through the minutes, but as anything that comes to public hearing, there are multiple different steps along the way. And there's multiple different decisions that have to be made to get to the final decision with any ordinance, LDR change, or any other policy of this board. So I would agree with Commissioner Flesher. It wasn't as black and white as was presented today.
And I'm actually a bit offensed about it, because this was about a presentation and an opportunity to speak, and it has evolved. I understand. You want to talk about gaming? We have two new county commissioners that, quite frankly, I can't bring it on board, Commissioner Adams can't bring it on board, and Commissioner O'Brien cannot bring it on board. He was on the other side of the vote. So if you want to look at this, You all have been lobbied today. You all have been given the opportunity to have facts according to the presenter. If we move forward, we move forward.
And
That's what this system's about. So again, if you want the opportunity to do that, you need to place it on discussion and you need to move it forward. And then we will begin the whole process all over again on new facts or old facts. But it is limited to you two understanding what was happening. I just caution you that this was according to the presenter. The timeline is there. There are many facts that were left out that you need to look at. I would suggest you look at to have a better understanding. This was not a sudden change. This is how we conduct our decision-making. We want to hear all parties. We want to hear the public. We want to do our research. Sometimes, and if you think for one moment that the vote at the last meeting was predetermined, then it was not. So sometimes the vote is not consistent with what has happened in the first public hearing, then the second public hearing. It has happened many times here, and it should happen because this is the people that we serve. It's not us that we serve. So we have to be guided by what our people want to bring forward and what they're looking at. Again, these are two individuals who have a point. However, there are many people who have a point, and we have to look at how we got there, why we got there, and not just, well, it just changed all of a sudden. No, it didn't change all of a sudden. You need to move things forward to clearly evaluate them, assess them, gain all the facts, and then make the best decision for the greater good of the citizens of the county. Did that answer the question?
In general terms, yes, and I'll watch the video. That's why, it would be really helpful if, we had a little more detailed minutes, because watching videos goes on and on and on. But perhaps someone can identify
That's something else that was voted upon, and
So-
the minutes have not changed since
I know, but
15 years
I'm
ago.
just telling you, it's a good reason for it. Anyway, all right, well, thank you. And yes, I will research it, I'll read the minutes, watch the videos. I want to understand this because it seems that it's affecting an entire area, ag. It's important, and it's important just not to have respect for the system undermined. This system here, the way we conduct business, and also the larger system, which has to do with zoning and what goes on in the different zones. So thank you so much for coming here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, since everybody else has weighed in.
Sure.
Thank you. Just for the record, I did vote in favor of the LDR change back in March, and I did not flip my vote, and I voted in favor of the LDR change in October. Commissioner Adams brought up a lot of examples of other farming activities, and I agree. But if you heard the speakers, none of those things is what they're complaining about. They're not complaining about being next to a grove. They're not complaining about being next to White Rabbit Acres. They're not complaining about being next to a big farm or a small farm. They're complaining about being next to a commercial lawn mowing service. Okay, so they're not complaining about any of the other farm activities. They're not complaining about noise or smell, any of that. It's the commercial lawn mowing activities. And Mr. Spencer quoted me, and I did say it. When I'm out mowing my yard Saturday morning, I am not saying to myself, hey, look at me, I'm farming. I'm mowing my lawn. When my neighbor has their commercial lawn service come, I don't look over there and say, hey, those guys are farming. No, they're mowing the lawn, okay? So mowing the lawn is not ag, it's not farming, it's not anywhere remotely related to agriculture. Now, I do agree, and back during this discussion, Commissioner Adams mentioned that her family used to have, I believe, a nursery of some type. And part of their ancillary services was they would go out and plant the trees or shrubs or things they sold, and that's perfectly understandable. I do see that as accessory to the tree farm or the plant nursery, certainly. But then mowing the grass week after week is not related to that ancillary use. It was brought up who came first. Well, you heard Mr. Kendrick say he bought his home in 1995, but the rules were changed in 1997. So it's a case of Mr. Hendricks bought his home and then the airport moved in next to him. And then finally, I've heard jobs mentioned a couple times now, and Commissioner Moss, this is where you should go back and watch the March video, because upon making the motion, or seconding the motion to move forward with the LDR change, one of the things that Commissioner Flesher emphasized was that the LDR would have a grandfathering clause in it. As a matter of fact, Commissioner Flesher championed that grandfathering clause. And I believe at the time, I think the number was there were 16 companies that were actively running a lawn service business in situations like we heard today. So Commissioner Flesher's second on that motion would include a grandfathering clause that all of those existing companies would not be impacted by the LDR change. We were not going to go back and shut them down. It was only for going forward that new companies could not come in and do that. So all of those jobs that those existing 16 companies had would not be impacted. They would be there the next day afterwards, and the next year after that, and the year after that. So, you know, if we want to bring up jobs, keep in mind that there was a grandfathering clause championed by Commissioner Flesher to keep those jobs in place. So we did take that into account. So with that, I believe Commissioner Adams or Commissioner Flesher could bring this back because they were on the prevailing side. It would be bad form for me to do that. But I would urge either Commissioner Ehrman or Moss to bring this back because I think it does need to be vetted. I know prior to the October meeting, I received calls from several of the people in support of the LDR change, and they said, well, do we need to come? And I said, well, I don't think so. I said it was a 4-1 vote. I'm sure Commissioner Adams is still going to be against it because she's been consistent. But it was a 4-1. I don't see where this would change. And certainly I was grossly wrong because 2 commissioners flipped their position. So I think it does need to be brought back. And I think it would be appropriate if one of you should decide to do that. I think I would gladly support that. So. With that, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. In concluding this, you pointed out clearly that I was looking at jobs that were imperiled and threatened, that were in existence for many years while Mr. Spencer was living in a gated subdivision during the development of those jobs. Didn't you live in Tropical Way?
It's not a gated subdivision.
Okay, thank you.
I live in a regular housing development.
Thank you. Please don't shout from back there. Thank you. Thank you.
Said that many times.
Well, if we did that, I would be correcting a lot of what you said earlier today. So let's not turn this into a debate. Thank you, sir.
Please, go ahead.
In any event, the discussion regarding the jobs and the grandfathering, and thank you for saying that, Mr. Vice Chairman, but unfortunately, the grandfathering in put a lock on every existing business, every existing endeavor. They could not add a 2x4 to their existing premise. They could not go forward in any way. So basically, although I was seeking the grandfathering of their rights to continue on and to protect them, they were not protected. If they needed an addition, shed, pole barn, extension to their property, it would be perceived as a violation and they would be out of compliance. So the grandfathering was open for debate and discussion at that point, and that was one of the turning points as well. Okay?
Yes, thank you, I appreciate it.
again-
I will definitely plan to bring this back to the board. I'll plan on it.
We'll look
Thank you,
forward to that.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you. Anything further? We're going to take a brief recess as requested. Hey, that worked. Yeah. The meeting will now be called back to order, and we have a public notice item. Counselor.
Thank you very much. We have a public hearing scheduled for April 6th. It'll be to consider an amendment to Chapter 313, Merchandising of Tobacco Products. This will be legislative in nature, and again, that public hearing will be held on April 6th. And with that, I turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Counselor. The next item, County Administrative Matters. We have a resolution in support of the adoption of House Bill 1143 and Senate Bill 1466 as filed in the 2021 Florida legislative session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to turn it into the capable hands of Kathleen Keenan.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Kathleen Keenan, Legislative Affairs and Communications Manager. This is a resolution in support of the adoption of House Bill 1143 and Senate Bill 1466 as originally filed in the 2021 Florida legislative session. The proposed legislation, as originally filed by Representative Aaron Grahl and Senator Travis Hudson, amends Florida statutes which regulates the Florida Department of Transportation's funding of airports based on Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, airport classification. Under current state law, FDOT funds airport master planning and eligible aviation development projects at GAA airports at 80% of project cost. GAA are airports with no scheduled commercial airline service. When a GAA begins to receive scheduled commercial airline services and subsequently exceeds 10,000 annual commercial passenger enplanements, the airport is classified as a primary commercial service airport by the FAA and FDOT. When an airport receives this classification, FDOT funding eligibility is reduced from 80% to 50%. This puts smaller commercial service airports like the Vero Beach Regional Airport at a financial disadvantage. With the loss of state funding, the airport is faced with delaying or canceling capital improvement projects. This legislation, as originally proposed, would authorize funding by FDOT for up to 80% of master planning and eligible aviation development projects for commercial service airports that have not been classified as a large, medium, or small airport hub by the FAA. So the city of Vero Beach reached out to Indian River County requesting support for this proposed legislation about 2 weeks ago. However, I wanted to provide y'all with an update. As you know, the legislative session is currently in session right now. So Senate Bill 1466 was heard in its first committee stop this morning and was amended. So the amendment was filed, puts the bill back in its current law form, so it wouldn't protect airports like the Vero Beach Regional Airport or other airports across the state. Sorry, it puts it back in its puts it back to the current law. So as amended, SB 1466 currently negates the purpose of the bill. So based upon the new information that we received this morning from today's Senate committee, staff recommends we update the resolution to reflect the changes in the Senate bill.
Commissioners, any questions?
Yes, and thank you. I'm going to take this opportunity to thank Representative Grahl for bringing this forward. And I understand what you just said. It negates this, so we need to revisit it. But for the community, because I know the commission and the board appreciates how important the airport is to the entire area, talking about jobs and also tourism. But the situation is such that the airport had just enough passengers that it was just beyond the 10,000 point. And in terms of reimbursement, airports are very, very expensive to run in terms of the runways and different maintenance parts of the airport. And the reimbursement rate usually is 80-20. That's what it's been for years and years and years, meaning that the city pays 20%. But because it had gone just over the 10,000, it was going to change to a 50-50 situation. And this, of course, involves millions and millions of dollars. The city of Vero Beach, by the way, does not earn revenue from the airport itself. anything, although it's an enterprise fund, this is for the community to know. That revenue has to be sent to the FAA. So they're not, the airport itself is not a revenue producing item for them. So I really appreciate what Representative Grohl did. Thank you, for your work on it. I guess, it'll be amended then or revised? What we were going to pass today? I'm not talking about Tallahassee, but what we had before us.
So as of right now, Representative Grohl's bill we support as originally filed. The Senate bill by Senator Hudson was amended this morning. So it negates the purpose of the bill. So it puts it back in its current law, so it would not protect the Vero Beach Airport. So I don't think we'd be in support of that amendment.
We may want to say, make a minor amendment to the resolution saying supporting House Bill 1143 by Representative Grohl and Senate Bill 1466 as originally filed by Senator Hudson, because as originally filed, it is rowing the same direction. It's just that amendment that happened this morning sent it in the wrong direction. So we just want to be clear on that we would be supporting the originally filed version of the Senate bill.
It would be bittersweet, but in all fairness, in a discussion with Mayor Brackett, I was very excited to go forward, and hopefully all of my colleagues would be able to support both of these items so that we can, again, enhance the likelihood for viability, transportation, jobs, interconnectivity, and what the Vero Beach Airport means to the citizens and to the visitors as well. And I was very excited. This is very unfortunate that there's been a change, but I look to my fellow commissioners to move something forward so that we can
I think if it's all right with you, I think I would make a motion then to move this forward, but adding that verbiage, just the bill as originally filed.
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Kathleen, do you anticipate any more amendments being filed to the Senate bill? I mean, I know we're kind of early in the session, and if there's differences between the House and Senate, they usually have to somehow come together. What do you anticipate, or if you do anticipate anything happening? Although I know you've been sitting here all day, so you haven't really had a chance to talk to anybody.
I'm very happy that I checked on the status of the bill in the middle of this, in the middle of the meeting, so that I'd be able to give you the most up-to-date information. So I think it's too early to tell. I think there will be conversations between the House and Senate on, coming together on language. But as of right now, I mean, the bill on the Senate side has no purpose now.
Okay.
So I think there will be more conversations certainly to be had.
Okay.
And we'll work with Representative Grohl's office certainly to ensure her bill continues to move.
And just to follow up on that, any idea of where the amendment came from or the reason behind it? Was it?
I don't. I will be happy to follow up with their office, though.
Because this really shouldn't hurt any of the bigger airports. I mean, we're not taking any dollars away from them. I mean, we're just asking for the same funding level as has been the last 20 years or whatnot. So I'm not sure why somebody would be opposed to this. And I think there'd be a lot of other smaller cities with smaller airports that would be supportive. So I'm not sure why but okay, anyway.
Well, second for further discussion. Again, a little bittersweet because we've been hit with the recent update, but I believe we have to support our local regional airport and do everything we can to assure that things move forward. It's unfortunate. We could put a caveat on the resolution saying, well, if you guys change anything, then this thing is done. But that's an automatic. So we are, if this goes forward, we are writing resolution, or we're authorized to sign resolution to support what is given today in the bill.
Right, well, the originally filed Senate bill and the current House bill. Right?
That's correct.
Okay. And I do think it's important that we go ahead and pass this with that caveat, because we are getting ready to go to Tallahassee, and it'll be useful to be able to advocate for the bill in its original form while we're up there and express to everybody how important this is for our small airports.
So we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Moore, seconded by myself. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, and thank you for the continued updates. Next item is Community Development, resolution for the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County supporting the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Park, Historic Museum, and Cultural Center.
Mr. Chairman, Phil Mattson, Community Development Director, and it is my great privilege to be able to be associated with this project. A little background, recently the Gifford Community Cultural and Resource Center, it's a nonprofit organization composed of esteemed local leaders, many of which are my friends over the years, approached the county with the honored vision really to honor Dr. Martin Luther King, the park's namesake, and develop a center for cultural history and understanding that will foster creativity and fit into the background of the park. So when you think about it, how often in your career do you get a chance to be part of a generational project? I mean, something that will survive for a long time, something that will be a place of healing, a place where we can gather together, something that's, provides long overdue recognition in a part of the world that we venerate. And what we responded with was this formal pledge of commitment via resolution. So this resolution, to encapsulate it, speaks to our commitment to the Martin Luther King Park Group, the Resource Center and Community Center, to work in earnest with them to find a location within Martin Luther Park that would be a perfect host for the potential cultural center that they have in mind. There'll be a lot of detail coming forward over the next couple of months in terms of visioning, what would be included in the center. It's a privately funded endeavor, as I understand it. And I have a resolution here for you to consider. It's your pleasure if you'd like to read it or like me to read it out loud, or I can simply summarize it.
We have all been exposed to it, but the greater public has not, so it's at your discretion. But if you would like to present it, we would.
Thank you. Absolutely, I would. So it's a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County supporting the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Park Historic Museum and Cultural Center. And whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. changed our nation forever through his leadership, service, and clarity of vision, and whereas Dr. King received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964 for his work through the passage of the Civil Rights Act for combating racial inequality through the insistent use of civil disobedience and nonviolent resistance, and whereas the Gifford community is the center of African American culture and history in Indian River County, and whereas the Gifford community is home to the Old Macedonia Church, which serves as the Gifford Historical Museum and Cultural Center presently, and is a site on the Florida Black Heritage Trail, also called the African American History Trail, and whereas the Gifford Community Cultural and Resource Center, a nonprofit 501c3 volunteer organization, oversees the operation of the museum, as well as its extension, the Gifford High School Legacy Room at Gifford Middle School. And whereas the Gifford Community Cultural and Resource Center wishes to honor the legacy of both Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the contributions of the Gifford community to the rich fabric of life in Indian River County through the construction of a cultural center, which may include a library, studios, galleries, a community meeting room, and enhanced museum facilities, while preserving the historic church, the historic grave markers in the surrounding greenscape, trails, and other existing amenities at the park. And whereas Indian River County wishes to express its support for the Gifford Community Center and Resource Center in this endeavor, further, Indian River County is eager to coordinate with the Gifford Community Cultural and Resource Center and Gifford Community to develop the center. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Indian River County Board of County Commissioners that the Indian River County Board of Commissioners offers its pledge of commitment to the Gifford Community Cultural and Resource Center and its supporters, and that it'll work in earnest with the center to identify appropriate locations for the facilities consistent with the wishes of the community and with our land development regulations, and we're committed to leasing a mutually identified portion of the park for this purpose. Once again, it's been a great privilege. I'm delighted to help start and kick off this project, and I think this is something we're all going to be very, very proud of.
Bill, I just I want to thank you for your hard work. It's a complicated endeavor. We have a historical site. We have a park. We have a burial ground. We have a walkway. We have other enhancements. And then you have this great idea to be placed there. And again, I want to thank all of the individuals who took the opportunity to meet early on and discuss this and share the vision, the understanding, because it's a great concept, and what I call this is a private-private partnership. We have land that's the citizens' land, it's public land, but this group wants to raise funds, develop, erect, and have a museum that will live in perpetuity on county property that is leased to the organization. And I think it's just a great idea. Again, I want to thank everybody for their insight, understanding. This has been discussed. I know all of you had the discussion independently, as we could all not meet. But I want to say that you got some great minds, a great vision, and I hope it can work out. And I know you'll have a large part to play in that fitting into the right concept. This resolution gives this group an opportunity to go out and say, we're committed, the county's committed, and they'll be able to raise funds probably very rapidly because it's such a great idea, and I want to say thank you once again. But with that, can't make any motions, and says...
Mr. Chairman, if I may. First, let me say I'm fully supportive of the project, and I'm supportive of the resolution, except for I have one issue with the wording in the resolution, and that's in the second whereas clause, Phil. The last sentence there, through insistent use of civil disobedience and nonviolent resistance. I'm sure back in the 1960s, the civil disobedience might have been just a black person going in and sitting down in a restaurant for whites only, or taking a seat on a bus, pretty, I would say, passive activities such as that. But I think in today's day and age, that civil disobedience has now morphed into a more violent encounter, such as storming the Capitol and injuring people and things like that. I would feel a lot better if we could just remove the word disobedience and have that final sentence read, through insistent use of civil and nonviolent resistance. I think going forward, I would much more prefer it without the disobedience word in there. That's my opinion.
May I say something?
Please.
I'm fine with it as is. I mean, in 1964, and the reference is very clear, that was civil disobedience, and I don't think we should rewrite history in any way.
We're not rewriting history.
Well, we're saying it wasn't, or it's now we're not going to consider it civil disobedience. In 1964, that was civil disobedience, and it clearly states that it was 1964. I don't have any problem with it as is.
Any other commissioners want to weigh in?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm fully support this project also, and I'm a big person when it comes to history and promoting the county, and by doing this does this. And I'm also a big advocate and a very much into United States history. I hear what Commissioner Moss is saying, but it was in my opinion that everything I've ever read, and I've read a lot about Dr. King, and he never really promoted disobedience. He believed in nonviolent and orderly resistance. I would support Commissioner O'Brien in this, and I'll be glad to make a motion to accept this resolution, and with taking the word disobedience out of it, and see where this goes, and look forward to great things in the future.
Well, I'll second it no matter what it says, but because the concept is the concept, and it's a wonderful concept. And one thing that was stated was that it was a group bringing this forward, but the group that's bringing it forward is the community, which is a wonderful thing. I really
Plus, I
appreciate
would
that.
say it just sounds better in using grammar to say, to just eliminate it. I think from a grammar standpoint, if I was writing it, just say civil and nonviolent resistance.
Well, I think, personally, I think we get a little too prissy today, a little too, I mean, it is what it is. That's what it was in 1964, and I don't think we have to be afraid to say that, but if you are, you are. All right.
Going forward, history is changing by the minute, and I'm glad a lot of past history has changed. We're all better off for it, and yes, history is marked in the annals of the books. However, this is a resolution, and this resolution is in support of this project, and that's what we have to keep our mindset on. So I support that as well. So, is there anything further? Anybody wishing to speak in the matter? Looks like we might be going forward, folks. And that's a soft might. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, we're almost there.
Barely.
On behalf of the steering committee, the Gifford Community Culture and Resource Center Board of Directors, Gifford Historical Museum members, Gifford High School Alumni and Friends Association, we sincerely thank you. We thank our District 2 Commissioner, Honorable Joe Fletcher, and all Honorable Board of Commissioners. We thank the County Administrator, Jason Brown, the Community Development Director, Phil Matson, Parks and Recreation Director, Kevin Kervin, and Assistant Administrator of General Services, Mike Zito, for working with us and establishing this commitment of resolution to lease land in the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Park and develop a cultural center for our community. As we remember our Gifford pioneers, our mission is to preserve, enhance, and celebrate the history of Gifford and historic African Americans throughout Indian River County by enriching life through the introduction and education of culturally significant programming for youth and the constituents of Indian River County. Our vision is to restore the heart of Gifford, to bring back the dignity of Gifford and the pride of Gifford by enriching cultural diversity and respect for all in our county for generations to come. May we know we are not isolated beings, but connected in unity for love of our community and love for our county. As we continue this project together, we thank you for the opportunity to do something historic and extraordinary for Gifford, therefore for Indian River County. Thank you.
Well said, well put, and I want to say, things like this aren't happening all over our great nation. That's what makes Indian River County, Gifford Indian River County, a different, exceptional place to live, to grow, and I want to thank you all again for your combined efforts to move this forward. We'll now vote to move this forward, and then the process will begin. So thank you. Upon motion by Commissioner Amendment, seconded by myself, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you all. County Administrator, we have, did you want, otherwise we have item 12B1? 12B2?
I think she wanted to take a picture.
Oh, most certainly. You want to do that? Bring them all back. We'll pause this and, Joe, you want to make a shout out in the hallway? Tell them to come on all back?
Okay.
We'll get them all.
Let them come back in.
Well, no, thank you all. You're doing all the hard work.
You did it.
How you doing?
Yeah.
I don't recognize anybody half.
Y'all might have to make 2 rows here, so come on down. Yeah, Freddie, you're in the back row.
At least he's not standing in front of me this time.
I have to say, you've all made history again today. This is probably the largest gathering for a letter of intent and resolution from Indian River County.
I see Stan in the background.
Stan, come on down, Stan.
Come on.
And your lovely bride, Angela? Spent most of her adult life in Gifford, teaching, helping. Stan.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Walford, always a
Hey.
pleasure.
Thank you. Pass. What's going on? How you doing? Now the easy part comes.
Now y'all got to do the hard work.
Ah, it's easy there. They generate the funds.
easy part.
I got it right here.
Now we'll return back to the added item on the agenda, item 12B1. County Administrator.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your indulgence for this late-breaking item that we have received an offer regarding that we've been working on for a while. regarding one of our communication towers. So I'll invite Dan Russell, our Information Technology Director, down to present the item to you. Thank you.
Morning, Dan.
Good morning.
You'll be the last good morning.
For the record, Dan Russell, Information Technology Director. I appreciate the board adding this item to the agenda at last moment. It came to us late last week, and it does carry with it an expiration date of this Friday. So it was a compelling reason to move quickly. Briefly, the background on this, as the county administrator mentioned, we received an offer of purchase of essentially what amounts to a perpetual easement and a site agreement is how I would characterize it for our north tower located at 810 Bailey Drive in the city of Sebastian. Brief history on that: the county entered into an agreement in 1995 to have the tower constructed. It has been subleased since that point in time. We currently have 3 subleases that generate revenue for the county there one in the amount of roughly $5,000 a month with a 3% annual escalation, another that is a fixed $12,000 per year, and then a third direct lease with FPL, which is about $11,000 per year with a 4% escalation. In May of last year, County Attorney's Office brought forth to the board a recommendation to terminate those leases as they expired at the end of 2020, and then seek assistance from a consultant that could help us to negotiate leases going forward for these towers. That was approved by the board, and we have done that. And then, as the county administrator mentioned, that has resulted in this offer today. So last week, we did receive the offer from Tiger Acquisitions. This is for the perpetual easement and the underlying and surrounding tower site, along with access to utility and easements serving the site, the tower together with all improvements, fixtures, and personal property, as well as the leases, subleases, and licenses agreements, which grants others a right to use or occupy a portion of the tower, which basically amounts to the co-location agreements, as the industry term goes. That also any permits associated with the tower or the site, personal real property associated with the tower or the site. And the purchase offer at this point is $4,050,000 for this particular tower. And again, we are very early on. This letter of intent is what I'm reading from today, is a letter of intent to enter into the negotiations for what ultimately amounts to a purchase of the assets described. We are currently reviewing the site agreements that have been submitted as Schedule B. The letter of intent does list those as PSAs to be drafted, so there is a placeholder within the letter of intent. So we are not agreeing to the PSAs as written. We certainly have a few concerns that we want to work through on that, and I'll defer to County Attorney to add to that.
Colin?
Just to clarify, we are supportive of the letter of intent, but just want to make it very clear, and I think this language is in the letter of intent, to the extent we find out between now and when we submit the response to the entity in response to the board's direction, if the direction is to move forward with the letter of intent. We just want to make it very clear and have the board's direction that if there are significant issues that the purchaser isn't willing to agree to with us, that then we would, the deal is off. And some of those include ideas of, we have equipment on this tower. One of the provisions in the proposal to us was that there would be initial 5-year term for our equipment, followed by additional 5-year terms, but that could be canceled at the end of any term by the purchaser, and that was very concerning to us. So I just didn't want, if the board asked us to move forward with the letter of intent and move forward with negotiations, if they were these sticking points that we just couldn't get through, that there wasn't surprise by the board in the event we terminated negotiations or just didn't move forward with the letter of intent. But Jason,
Yeah, and just to add on to this letter of intent is basically our intent to negotiate that agreement. That would have to come back to the board. $4 million is nice, but our prime directive here is to make sure that we retain the ability to keep our equipment on there, and I'm not an attorney, but I would say like in a perpetual easement or something like that, because our folks do use those, whether it's Public Works employees or our first responders or even our second responders per Jim Hyde earlier this morning. I call them all first responders. But for our police and fire, to make sure that those communications are in place. So that is something that is basically something that we must have. And we will, staff recommends that we enter into this letter of intent, but with the understanding that the agreement has not finally, been agreed to, and there's some things that we will negotiate, as it says in the letter of intent, that the agreement will be negotiated. And if those negotiations are fruitful, we will bring back that purchase agreement to the board for final consideration. Exactly.
Very well. Commissioners?
Be happy to move staff's recommendation.
I'll second it.
A motion by Commissioner Adams, seconded by Commissioner Ehrman. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, County Attorney Matters, Agricultural Advisory Committee restructuring.
Thank you very much. We have Cassidy Brown here today on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. She's going to kick us off with the Agriculture Advisory Committee restructuring issue. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Brown.
Good morning, Commissioners. Well, barely good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Again, Cassidy Brown, legal intern at the County Attorney's Office. On January 12th, 2021, the board directed the County Attorney's Office to propose and work on the restructuring of the Agriculture Advisory Committee. Staff researched similar committees in counties across the state of Florida, and the new recommendation for the restructuring of the committee is 4 actively involved in agricultural industry representatives. This is a change from the current structure. This takes away the specific industry representatives and allows for flexibility in case of a change in the agricultural industries throughout the county. As we have seen, the next change is a Farm Bureau representative. This allows for advocates of unincorporated farmers and rural landowners. The next members are 2 active agricultural industry associated representatives, which is currently on the Ag Committee structure. And the next members are 2 actively engaged in agritourism representatives. This is in consideration of the rise in agrotourism throughout the state of Florida and Indian River County, due to the fact that agrotourism allows for easier to apply COVID guidelines and CDC regulations to support tourism and community involvement. The County Attorney's Office recommends that the board review the suggested restructuring and provide direction, and authorize the Attorney's Office to draft a resolution for the restructuring of the committee. I am available for any questions.
Mr. Chair, first I'd like to thank Ms. Brown for all her hard work on this. She really did a great job of researching what the other counties were doing as far as their ag advisory committees and looking at trends and making sure that ours was in line, but also a committee that could be effective. I know we've had some issues in the past with filling some of those holes on the Ag Advisory Committee. I think this, while it does add 2 members, which really is because we were having, it's very difficult to have a meeting when you have not enough. So we weren't having problems with quorums. It's hard to have a discussion when there's only 2 people because there's only 5 members on the committee. So it kind of broadens that ability to have a discussion, but also it gives us a little bit more flexibility in who we could appoint to that committee to make it a little bit more reflective of the community. So I appreciate all the hard work, and it was a pleasure working with Ms. Brown on this project. So I don't know if the board members have any questions about how we arrived at the new kind of structure. I'd be happy to answer those, but if not, then I would be happy to move staff's recommendation.
I'll second it.
It's under discussion. I was wondering if I could comment.
Most certainly.
Robert Adair.
Who?
Bob Adair.
Bob Adair. Please, most certainly.
Oh, okay. Well,
good afternoon.
It is good afternoon, 12:01. Thank you for letting me speak virtually. I appreciate that. My name is Robert Adair. I reside at 7055 33rd Street. I am currently the chairman of the Agriculture Advisory Committee. And this was new to me. I just happened to see it on the agenda, and I wanted to give a little input. Currently, there's actually not 5 members on the Ag Advisory Committee. Currently, there's 7 members, and it does allow for associated members to participate in that. There's 2 positions there. So I appreciate what the attorneys for the county have done, and the intern, I'm not sure her name, Cassie's, has done. And I agree that we need to have more balance in terms of agritourism, but I would like to caution you that the current resolution under the Ag Advisory that it's operating under is called 2003-125. And in there, there's some key important items that I don't know will be included in this change. If this changes entirely over the membership of the board, that's okay with discussion. But I would not want to change things like the definition of agriculture, which is one of the problems you're having with your LDRs, where you have these associated industries come in under the guise of being agriculture. And I see this as a possibility where the terminology that staff is using, actively engaged, agricultural industry associated representatives. And I just don't want to get into a vague area of exactly what is ag and what is commercial landscaping, maintenance, and that type of thing. So I would make a suggestion to amend what the attorney's suggesting, that we do work with our existing 7 members, and that we title one of those associated industries as the Farm Bureau and one as ag tourism, and then allow an opening for an associated industry. I don't think it's a good idea to have more than one representative representing more than one aspect of the industry. So the idea of having 2 agritourism members, I just don't think that's smart. Right now we have cattle, citrus, vegetable, irrigation, horticulture, and 2 associated industries. I like the idea of bringing in agritourism and defining that as a member. I agree. I think bringing in a Farm Bureau member is a good choice, and that's possibly something we've overlooked, and I agree with that. And then I say we add an 8th position as associated industry. That gives equal balance to each industry for in-depth, intelligent, informed discussions of all the aspects of agriculture in our county without giving more weight to one industry over another. That's my recommendation to the BCC. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Adair, to address your concerns, right now there are already 2 associated industry representatives. That would stay the same with the new proposal, 2 associated industry representatives. You have right now 5 involved in agricultural, basically representatives, although they're called out with specific industries. We've had a problem filling some of those because of the changing nature of ag. So the proposition is to roll those together, which is similar to what we do with tourism. We have members on our Tourism Development Committee that are members actively engaged in tourism, but it's not defined as to which industry of tourism they're within. And then lastly, the agritourism representatives, we need to have a odd number of members. So we either have to have 7 or 9. So with adding the agritourism representatives, that brings us from the 8 to the 9. You still have a majority of the board that is actively engaged in agriculture, and then 2 members that represent the newer upcoming uses within the ag community, which I know you're aware because we've had discussions at that committee before, that many of the agritourism operators are former agricultural operators. So it's very intertwined. But that's how we came up with the 9, to bump that up from 7 to 9. And we need to have an odd number for quorum and voting purposes. But we will be bringing, if this goes through, we will be bringing this back to the Ag Advisory Committee for discussion on how we realign our current members and look for new members.
Okay, and I may have, I realize I did overlook the odd number in my recommendation. What I would then like to suggest that we have 2 associated industries. That gives us even more flexibility, but we please only limit to 1 agritourism and 1 farm bureau, along with the other 5 industries that we've demarked in the past. So I just want to make sure that we don't lose the defined definition of agriculture, and that we have a balanced membership, and that the BCC not approve this until the Agriculture Advisory Committee has a chance to vet it and consider the recommendations I'm making.
My motion stands.
Thank you, Mr. Dare. So we have a motion.
Yes, I'd still like to move forward with my motion and bring this back to, once it is approved with the new structure, bring it to the Ag Advisory Committee at that point.
And I still second it.
So we have a motion and a second, Commissioner Adams and Commissioner Moss. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
I want to thank the board for its support, and I want to thank Cassidy Brown for her hard work on this item. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and, Counselor, did you reserve the first option for employment? Cassie, she's doing such a fine job here that,
And I'm very excited to say that Cassidy will, our next project that she's working on, you will see on April 6th, where Cassidy will be presenting the Tobacco 21 ordinance that the board asked to be drafted. So Cassidy was the lead drafter on that, and she will be the lead presenter as well. So very excited about the work that Cassidy has done. It's a little bit different than your traditional law firm sort of intern stuff, but I think she's gotten a great opportunity to see local government in action. So
yes,
I'm excited about that.
And thank you, Cassidy. All right, next item is the Solid Waste Disposal District, SWID. That's the approval of the minutes for meeting of December 15th, 2020, and the approval of minutes for the meeting January 12th, 2021.
Move approval.
Second. That's a motion by Vice Chairman O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Airman. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. And the final item is the spring residential paper shredding event on April 17th, 2021. I see Sue's here. Come on down.
Good afternoon. For the record, Sue Flack, Solid Waste Disposal District. Last but not least, correct? So we're very excited to announce that we are going to be having another paper shredding event, which will be April 17th, which is a Saturday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Southeast Secure Shredding. We will be partnering with Waste Management again. It's a great event, large turnout. Just to give you a quick idea of how popular this event has become, we did have our last shredding event July 18th, which is off-season. It was also pretty much the COVID situation going on, and we still had a record 606 cars come through our line. So it's a very popular event. We're looking forward to it and hoping that it's approved by all of you today.
Well, Sue, thank you. We're very excited that this effort continues. It saves our landfill, it saves our environment, and it gives folks the opportunity to properly destroy any records or paperwork that they have that needs to be properly destroyed in a safe and harmless way. Are there any incentives going on for people to bring as much as possible?
Yes, they can't bring as much as possible. They can bring 3 boxes weighing 35 pounds each, and it will be securely shredded on site and recycled, actually, into toilet paper. So it's a good event all the way around. Yes.
Very appropriate.
Mr. Chairman, 2 things. Sue, one, just would like to point out that Waste Management is picking up the cost of this event. So Southeast Secure charges an amount per vehicle, and Waste Management is picking up $16,000 to cover that cost. So there's no cost to the residents or the solid waste disposal district. So a shout out, thank you to Waste Management. And secondly, usually every year when you have these, you do like a little flyer. Are you going to produce one so I can send that out on my email list?
Absolutely. I can send it to you via email. We will also have them out here on the information desks within the next week.
Okay, good. And I'll send that out to my South County peeps. Okay.
Thank
Mr. Chairman, glad to move staff recommendation.
It's a motion by Vice Chairman O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Adams. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Just want to thank everyone. Tomorrow's St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all. Friday's the partial day for me, St. Joseph's Day. Okay, Joe, now you're here. Now we can share it. In sunshine. It's a special day for Joe, too. And all of you, and I want to thank everybody for attending the Firefighters Fair and enjoying Indian River County's riches, our recreational riches, that we continue to enhance, and thank you for your support. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.